Good morning, brothers and sisters. How precious we have been born of God. It is according to the Bible, but not out of our imagination. In the book of Acts, chapter 17 mentioned, we are indeed his offspring. And also in the first book of John mentioned 5 times that we have been born of God. Also in the Gospel according to John chapter 1 talk about we are born of God. It's really precious that the Bible mentioned a lot that we should be very assured that we're indeed born of God. Since we're born of God, it tells us that there is affection between God and us. The affection between the Father and Son. How precious. We have the deepest relationship with Him. Our life is bound up together with God. Affection is so delicate and wonderful. It cannot be described by words. Affection makes us to think of each other. You will give unconditionally. Even the human on earth behaves this way. How much more is the affection of the Father and Son between God and us? Every one of us affects the Father's heart most, and Abba cherishes this affection most. Shall we sing a hymn to Abba? How precious, He loves us so much, and we affect Him most. In the song I like to sing is in Songs of Love, page 61, The Father's Love. We'll sing the first and the fourth stanzas. You can lift up your eyes, look unto the sky, and open your heart to Abba. Sing to Him with your smile. I am born of God, I am His dear child. We are closely united, the highest Father's love is the same forever and ever. He gave His Son for me, He gives me all freely. He cares for my whole life, gives me endless glory. Father, oh Father, I love you. Abba really gives us the most precious. The Father and Son, or parents and the children, are willing to give unconditionally. Abba spared His beloved Son in His bosom in order to gain us. How will He not also with Him graciously give us all things? How precious. Abba is responsible for our life on earth and until eternity. Let us say to Abba, Oh Father, I love you. Shall we? 1, 2, 3. Oh Father, I love you. Abba really enjoyed our love expression to Him. The verses I'd like to share with you is in the book of Romans, chapter 13, verse 8. And it said, Let no debts remain outstanding, except the continuing debts to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. I didn't understand this verse when I newly believed, for it mentioned, Let no debt remain outstanding, but except the continuing debt. Sounds a bit contradicted. This verse especially mentioned to love one another, to love others. The first sentence was easy to understand, that we shouldn't owe people anything. For example, if you owe people money, we need to pay back as soon as possible. But if you have promised to do some work for others, then you should go ahead to fulfill your promise. Shouldn't be dragged along or just leave it as it is. The words here mentioned, let no debts remain outstanding, no matter if it is materially or it is our responsibility. We shouldn't owe anyone anything. I believe it is easy for you all to understand. On the other hand, accepts the continuing debt. I believe there is a different meaning of the debts in the first sentence. The debts I have talked about is the external thing, and here, accept the continuing debt, I believe, is the touch or feeling from your heart. The gifts which is given from God materially or in experience or spiritually. The grace of God are so great, but how much have we repaid Him? It seems we may not give enough in return, and we didn't have these good things to give to others. When you have many good things, then you really want to give to others, but seems you have never enough to give, and the needs is great. Then you might have the feeling of owing people. For me, as an example, I always have this feeling of this outstanding debt. I'm not boastful of myself. This is not what I meant. For example, when I share the gospel, as I'm enjoying or receiving the love of the gospel, but when I share in the gospel meeting, I couldn't express myself well to the people. I always find that I should share better. I always find the message which I shared was not good enough. Seemed I owed them something. I have let the brothers and sisters down to those who has invited the new friends to come for the gospel meeting. I could have shared better, and this feeling of owing has created pressure to myself. But it is also a good motivation to have the good preparation for the message, to pray for the meeting, pray for myself, and as well as the new friends. It is not an easy feeling of owning people, but I shall give thanks for what I have received is great. I don't know whether this is a good example for explaining except the continuing depth. And generally, when we are so loved and want to love others, you will have this feeling. On the other hand, when I share the message to the elderly or the brothers and sisters in a tertiary group, even I really take a long time, or when I'm preparing the message seriously, when I share and got the good feedback or praising from brothers and sisters, but I always found I cannot express myself good enough at the end, and I felt sad. I couldn't give to brothers and sisters the things I want to give in my heart. There is a feeling of owing in my heart. I believe it is because I really love brothers and sisters, and I want brothers and sisters to receive the blessings. I felt helpless that I couldn't done my best. If this continuing death makes me feel down, then this was not good. But I believe this continuing death means you will give thanks, for you have received a lot. When you receive a lot, then rightly you shall give to others as well. I'd like to tell you something about the situation of the Dutch. As you all know, the tulips is very famous there, and Holland is the backyard of the world. It's a beautiful place. The spring in Holland is the most beautiful spring in the world. But what I like to say is the Dutch is more beautiful than the spring in Holland. I'd like to tell you a story about Mr. Lee. He went to live in Holland. He lived in a tree house. He received a phone call one day. "Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Lee." And Mr. Lee answered, "Yes, we're calling from the electricity company." Mr. Lee asked, "What's the matter, please?" And the company answered, "Your electricity bill has €26 more compared to last month? May I know the reason, please?" Mr. Lee was a bit impatient about the inquiry about the bill. He then said, "So, is there a problem? Are you questioning me whether I have rightly used the electricity properly?" Then the staff from the electricity company answered, "This is not the case, sir, for we find the expense has increased and we are wondering if the wire is leaking. Can we come to check and see if the wire is okay?" Mr. Lee was stunned that because for the electricity bill has increased and the company is so kind that if there was any problem in his electricity setup and wanted to come for investigating, Mr. Lee wouldn't mind at all, and he felt embarrassed instead. In 30 minutes, the staff in uniform has arrived to Mr. Lee's tree house and looked thoroughly the electricity cords, the roots, and the circuit board. As Mr. Lee observed, they were very polite and taking the investigation seriously. When they were working, Mr. Lee has thought of something. He has received a letter from the police which made him shocked about the Dutch, and the letter was written as, "To our honored Mr. Lee, your car has violated the rule twice, and we would like to know the cause, to see if there are any deficits in our traffic facilities at that site, or is there anything happened? We are sorry for the inconvenient cause. I hope you can tell us your comment. Thank you." The letter was about the valet parking for Mr. Lee, and it has happened twice. They thought if the parking facility were not good enough, which leads to Mr. Lee violating the rule for parking. This attitude has made this Chinese Mr. Lee very surprised. Generally speaking, people would try to find the cause from others when problems appeared. They try to blame others if they can, or try to avoid responsibility, but the Dutch try to find the answers or the cause first. They may find they are not doing good enough, or there is some deficit in them. So you can see, Holland is an advanced and a beautiful country. Brothers and sisters, if our hearts are in continuing death, to think that we can do more, but not the others are not good enough or others can do better, I believe our hearts, even the whole church and the whole world, will be more beautiful. May the Lord widen our hearts.